Hey y'all, I'm Dr. Alex Ritza. I'm the cycling doc here in Toronto, Canada, and today I'm going to show you how to buy the proper fitting pair of cycling shoes for mountain bike, road, whatever it may be, because this is probably the most important purchase you will ever make, other than making sure that you have the right size frame, because if your shoes do not fit properly, it can be painful and it can be really difficult towards impossible to get a great bike fit. Because I can move somebody around on the saddle or change their experience on their bike by changing the position of their cleat, by shimming them, by wedging them, and by making internal changes in the shoes, either with reducing their size or putting some wedging or putting an orthotic or support in there. Ultimately, if somebody's shoes do not fit properly, it can also be really, really painful and make cycling extremely unpleasant. I've got 3 pairs of road shoes with me today and a couple more in the closet, because until I got my Bonds that were fitted and sized correctly over like 8 or 9 years of cycling, something never felt quite right. And I'll talk you through that journey. So in terms of a shoe, a couple things we have to talk about. We're talking about the sole of the shoe and its shape. And with these Bonds, they have a very different shape than, say, these physique shoes. Let's do a little close up here. So with these Bonds, you can see that they have a quite rectangular profile. There's very little curvature to the shoe. It's pretty straight shot between heel and toe, very, very wide forefoot of the shoe. And these things are basically just like a bathtub of carbon fiber, really good for a wide foot versus, say, this physique shoe. Here, this shoe has a little more curvature to it between the heel and the forefoot. It is not as wide of a shoe. It's definitely more narrow through the midfoot and the rear foot. The midfoot and the forefoot, and is harder to fit in this shoe for most people than, say, this Bont shoe. So another part we have to consider with any shoe is what we call the upper. So the upper is this part here on the shoe. And if somebody has a very high arch, an upper has to be higher to accommodate that volume there in the shoe. If somebody has a flatter foot, they're going to tolerate more different types of shoes. It doesn't have to have as big of an upper. And there's a difference that we're going to measure in a bit between the length of the arch of the foot and the length of the whole foot, which is made up a lot by the toes. So when you're buying a pair of shoes, very important that somebody uses a Brannock device, because this is going to tell you a couple of things. We're going to be able to measure the length of the foot, the length of the arch, and the width of the foot. And what we want to do with this is also take those same measurements in weight bearing, which is going to be a more important determination for the size of the shoe that you should buy. The reason when I do a fit, I transition from non-weight bearing to weight bearing is I want to see how that person's foot changes with the addition of weight, to see how much collapse of their arch they get, to see how the different parts of the foot move, to see if the foot pronates, to see if the foot widens, to see if the arch lengthens. And that's going to give me some valuable information for how I fit them, how I could build an orthotic, or what type of support. For most people, I think buying a shoe, you should be thinking about low support, medium support, high support. Because when buying a shoe, when fitting a shoe, it's important that the bottom of your foot matches evenly with the contour of the shoe. And if there are any gaps, you're going to want to fill that with an arch support or an orthotic. Ultimately, we want that area supported, not so much like you would think of for running to prevent pronation, more so to provide more surface area so the force gets distributed, less likely to have a hot spot. And then also, like in a ski boot, it's important for the foot to be touching, because that's how your brain gets proprioception or feedback. If there's a dead spot, those nerves in that part of the foot, they can't feel anything and they cannot relay any information to the brain. So let's say that you are somebody who has an arch length that is the same as the total foot length. That means that the upper of the shoe, or the height of your arch, is typically not going to be that high, and you don't need to consider anything special for the pair of shoes you're going to buy. But sometimes I'll do a fit, like I had one this week, and the person's arch length was a full size and a half bigger in measurement than their foot length. That tells me that their toes are itsy bitsy compared to the rest of the foot. That means that the foot is higher, the arch is higher, it takes up more volume. That person is going to need a shoe with a bit more upper. Now, there are certain shoes that have more upper, like a Lake has more upper. Specialized do not. Usually the ones that have more upper are going to be Seedy, Lake, and Specialized is about middle of the road, where Bont, on the other hand, typically does not have a large upper volume. This is something I would look up online, whether you check a chatbot or Google it. This will give you some feedback on the brand that you're looking for and how much arch height it will accommodate for. If you don't have enough arch height that you're considering, then it could be pushing down to the top of the foot and could be a source of discomfort and could be a source of numbness. We also want to consider width. So on this device, it goes all the way from A to E2. Again, if you look online, there are going to be certain shoes that have wider spaces than others. Typically, Italian shoes like Physique and Seedy, they're a little bit more narrow. Shimano, Specialized, they're a little bit more mid-range if somebody has a C or a D width. Of course, with Shimano, you can also get a wider shoe. And then if somebody has a really wide foot, I'm typically looking to fit them in a Bont, a Nimble, or a Lake. And those work really well for wide feet. And then the widest of feet typically are going to require a Lake. They're really good fitting shoes. So it's really also important, probably one of the things that makes it difficult to fit is not buying a shoe that's too big or too roomy. Obviously, if you buy a shoe that's too small, it's going to be constrictive, it's going to create pain. That's what happened to me with my Physique shoes. They were the right length at a 42, but because of that curvature, like I talked about in the shoe, I was always getting pressure here on the small of my small toe, no matter how the cleat was positioned, no matter if I used an orthotic, no matter how much it was wedged, the shoe shape did not measure or do not match my straight or rectangular foot shape. One of the problems I see is if somebody buys too big of a pair of shoes, is that their foot will be sliding around in the shoe. Now, the consequence of that is that their fit is going to be incredibly inconsistent. When I'm fitting, I always want to get the cleat in the same spot on the ball of the foot, usually between the first and second toe. If their foot is always moving around, that position is going to be extremely inconsistent and their fit will be inconsistent and they may be sliding around on the bike more than they should be. And that movement in the foot or in the shoe of the foot can create some translation and put some stress on the knee. I'm typically looking for there to be about a 0.5 centimeter of room between the end of the shoe and somebody's toe. Now, that might vary if somebody is going to buy a winter shoe versus a summer shoe versus an all-season shoe. I have 2 pairs of Bonts, one for fall-winter that will accommodate a thicker sock, and then my white ones here for ripping around in the summer where they are smaller. Okay. Now, a really neat hack that you can try if you have different sized feet, say one foot is a half size different from the other, or you've bought shoes that are too big for you, is what I'll do with those person's fit is I will get an old rag and I will literally rip the rag off and I will bunch it up and I will throw it into the front of their shoe, which will have the effect of making that person's shoe a little bit smaller. Now, it seems like a very weird, basic, not very professional fix, but it works incredibly well to get the shoe the exact right custom size as the foot should be, so that the foot is held in the same secure position, and it creates a nice sense of being planted and having good control of the shoe and the pedal stroke. So that's kind of my summary of what I would tell somebody if they're looking to buy a new pair of shoes. First off, you want to think about how much arch support you need, low, medium, high, when you're putting an insole or an orthotic in. You also want to measure your shoes and measure the width, the arch length, the foot length, and figure out what the difference is between weight bearing and non-weight bearing. You want to consider the shape of your foot and whether it has a little bit of curvature in it or whether it's straight, and whether that matches the literal footprint of the shoe. If your shoes are too small or there's a foot size difference, that's where we talked about throwing a rag into the shoe to make it a little bit smaller. It can be a very effective solution. If you have any questions, if you think I missed anything, put them in the comments below. I hope that's helpful. Hope you're comfortable out there riding.